Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The rain came down like it had a personal grudge against the world that night, slamming against the cracked windows of Maggie's roadside grill so hard I thought the glass might give up and shatter. It was a Tuesday in October, the kind of night where the air smells like wet dirt and trouble, and the neon open sign out front buzzed like a dying firefly. I was wiping down the counter with a rag that had seen better days, my pale yellow uniform sticking to my skin from the humidity sneaking in every time the door creaked open. Maggie's wasn't much. A dive off Highway 41 in bumfuck Tennessee, the sort of place folks only stumbled into when their gas tank was on E or their souls were running on fumes. Vinyl booths patched with duct tape, coffee that could strip paint if you brewed it wrong, and a jukebox that hadn't worked since Reagan was president. But it was my kingdom, all 800 square feet of it, and I'd been its queen for 5 years running. My name's Ava Bennett, and up until 3 months ago, I was just another nobody pouring coffee for truckers and dreamers too broke to chase anything better. I'd wake up at 5 every morning in my one-bedroom apartment down on Maple Street, throw my dark hair into a sloppy bun, and trudge the half-mile through fog so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. By 6, I'd have the grill fired up, the coffee dripping, and the same old faces shuffling in like clockwork. Roy Tucker, a grizzled trucker with a beard like steel wool, always wanted his eggs just kissing the pan. Runny enough to make you gag, but he tipped decent, so I didn't complain. Then there was Maggie Harper herself, the owner, who'd sit at the corner booth with her Earl Grey and a teaspoon of honey, barking orders between sips like she wasn't half retired already. Those folks were my constants, the background noise to a life I'd let fade into grayscale. I'd given up on big dreams a long time ago. Paris, a bakery with my name on it, a man who'd look at me like I was the sunrise. Nah, some people are born for greatness, and some are born to serve it black with a side of hash browns. That all changed when the headlights cut through the downpour like twin knives, blinding me for a split second before settling into the gravel lot outside. Steam curled up from the hood of a sleek black Lincoln Continental, too damn fancy for a place like this, and I squinted through the rain-streaked glass, figuring some rich asshole had taken a wrong turn off the interstate. The cook, Jimmy, had clocked out an hour ago, leaving me alone with the hum of the ancient generator that kept this joint glowing like a lighthouse in the storm. Power was out across half of Dixon County, but Maggie's kept chugging along, a stubborn little beacon for lost souls. The tires crunched gravel loud enough to hear over the thunder, and I watched that car sit there, engine idling, like it was sizing me up. Then the back door swung open, and he stepped out. No umbrella, no rush, just a tall figure, letting the rain soak him through like he didn't give a damn. His driver scrambled around with a big black umbrella, but the guy waved him off with a flick of his hand, already striding toward the diner. I straightened up, coffee pot still in hand, suddenly aware of the lipstick I hadn't bothered to reapply since noon, and the grease stain on my apron I'd meant to scrub out last week. The bell above the door jingled sharp and clear when he pushed through, and I swear the air shifted, got heavier, like it knew something I didn't. He was tall, over 6 feet easy, with dark hair plastered to his forehead from the rain, and eyes so blue they could have been chipped out of the sky. His suit was tailored, probably cost more than my rent for a year, but the way it clung to him now, soaked through, made him look less like a Wall Street prick, and more like a man who'd just crawled out of a fight he didn't plan on losing. Water dripped off his jaw, pooling on the linoleum, but he didn't wipe it away. Just stood there, staring at me like I was a ghost. "We've broken down," he said finally, voice deep and smooth, the kind of southern drawl that had been polished up by money and time away from places like this. "Driver says it'll be an hour before help gets here." I nodded, trying to play it cool even though my heart was doing a two-step in my chest. "Y'all can wait it out here. Coffee?" He didn't answer right away. Just slid into the booth nearest the window, his fancy watch catching the fluorescent light as he checked the time. I walked over, feeling like I was approaching a bear in the woods. Slow, careful, like he might turn on me if I moved too fast. Up close, those eyes hit me harder, piercing right through the haze of a long shift. I poured the coffee, black as tar, into a chipped mug and slid it across the table. That's when it happened. He looked up at me, really looked, and his whole damn face changed. His jaw went slack, his eyes widened like he'd just seen Jesus walk through the door, and the cool, collected vibe he'd been wearing melted away faster than ice on a July sidewalk. "Yeah, yes," he whispered. But it wasn't about the coffee. He was staring at me like I'd just risen from the dead. "What's your problem, mister?" I asked, sharper than I meant to. Something about the way he was gawking made my skin crawl. Not in a bad way exactly, but like he knew something I didn't. And it was big. "It's impossible," he muttered, more to himself than me. His hand, steady as a rock a second ago, started trembling as he reached inside his jacket. He pulled out a small gold locket, the kind you see in old movies, and clicked it open with a flick of his thumb. He turned it toward me, and I damn near dropped the coffee pot. The woman in that tiny photo could have been me. Same dark hair, same wide-set eyes, same little scar on the left cheek I'd gotten falling off my bike when I was 8. Only difference was her clothes, some fancy dress I'd never afford, and the way her hair was styled all perfect, not a messy bun like mine. I blinked hard, thinking maybe the rain and the late hour were messing with my head, but she was still there, staring back at me like a mirror I didn't know I had. "You look exactly like her," he said, voice catching on the words like they hurt to say. The locket shook in his hand, and for a second, this guy, this rich, powerful stranger, looked like he might break apart right there in Maggie's shitty booth. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My mouth went dry as I tried to find something to say, but all that came out was a weak, Who the hell is she?" He didn't answer, just kept staring, eyes locked on mine like he was trying to see through me, past me, into some memory I didn't own. The thunder cracked outside, loud enough to rattle the mugs on their hooks behind the counter, but I barely heard it. Every hair on my arm stood up, and some primal gut instinct screamed that this wasn't just some weird coincidence. This was a freight train barreling straight for my quiet little life, and I didn't have a prayer of stopping it. "Name's Nathan Cole," he said finally, snapping the locket shut and sliding it back into his pocket. He pulled out a business card, thick, embossed, the kind that screams money, and pressed it into my palm. His fingers brushed mine, warm despite the chill of the rain, and lingered just a heartbeat too long. "Please," he said, those blue eyes boring into me. "Call me." Then he was gone, back out into the storm like he'd never been there, leaving me with a cooling coffee mug, a racing pulse, and a card that felt heavier than it should have. I flipped it over. Nathan Cole, Coltech Industries, Nashville, TN. A phone number in sharp black ink stared back at me, daring me to dial it. I didn't sleep a wink that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, the shock, the hunger, the way he'd looked at me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking for years. I rolled his name around in my head like a piece of hard candy. Nathan Cole. Sounded familiar, like something I'd heard on the news or seen in one of those glossy magazines Maggie kept by the register. But why me? Why here? And who the hell was the woman in that locket? By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I called in sick, first time in 5 years, and fired up my ancient Dell laptop, the fan wheezing like it was on its last leg. I typed his name into Google, fingers shaking so bad I had to redo it twice. The screen lit up with headlines that made my stomach drop. Tech billionaire Nathan Cole revolutionizes green energy. Coltech CEO donates millions to disaster relief. The elusive Nathan Cole spotted at Nashville gala, and then, buried a few pages back, the one that stopped me cold. Tragedy strikes Cole family. Fiancée, Lila Montgomery, presumed dead in boating accident. The photo loaded slow, pixel by pixel, but when it finally came into focus, I felt the air get sucked out of the room. It was her, the woman from the locket, my face on someone else's life. I sat there, staring at the screen till my eyes burned, 100 questions clawing at my brain. Who was Lila Montgomery? Why did we look like twins? And what did Nathan Cole want with a nobody like me? I told myself to toss the card, forget the whole damn thing. Rich folks like him were trouble, always had been. But my hand kept drifting to it, tracing the edges till they were soft under my fingertips. That night changed everything. I didn't know it then, but fate don't knock polite-like with a calling card. It rolls up in a busted Lincoln on a rainy Tuesday and dares you to open the door. Stay with me, y'all, 'cause this is just the start of how one stranger flipped my world upside down, and how I found out I might not be the Ava Bennett I thought I was. I froze. Phone pressed so hard against my ear I thought it might crack. What the hell do you mean I'm not just a look-alike? My voice came out half shout, half whisper, like I was scared of the answer but needed it more than air. The kitchenette felt too small all of a sudden. The hum of the fridge too loud, like it was mocking me for thinking my life could stay simple. Nathan's voice stayed steady, but there was an edge to it now, like he was choosing every word with care. I don't want to do this over the phone, Ava. It's complicated. Can you come to Nashville? I'll cover everything. Bus, plane, whatever you need. Just hear me out. Nashville? I laughed, but it came out more like a choke. You think I'm just gonna hop on a Greyhound and waltz into your fancy world 'cause you say so? I don't even know you, man. And what's this about Lila not being dead? The internet says she's gone. Boat accident, no body. End of story. The internet don't know shit, he said, sharp enough to cut through my panic. I've got proof, Ava. Things I can't explain without you seeing them for yourself. I know this sounds crazy, and I know you got no reason to trust me, but I'm begging you. Give me a chance to show you what I found. I sank onto the couch, the springs groaning under me, and rubbed my temple where a headache was starting to bloom. Proof? What kind of proof could a guy like Nathan Cole have that'd make any of this make sense? And why me? I wasn't nobody special, just a waitress with a high school diploma and a car that barely started half the time. But that locket, that face, it was like staring at a puzzle with half the pieces missing, and Nathan was holding the box. I need time to think, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. This is a lot, all right? Take all the time you need, he said, softer now. But don't wait too long, Ava. Some things, they don't stay buried forever. The line went dead, and I sat there staring at the phone like it might bite me. My coffee was stone cold now, the mug leaving a ring on the table I'd have to scrub out later. I wanted to call Maggie back, tell her I'd be at work tomorrow like nothing happened. I wanted to throw that damn business card in the trash and pretend last night was just a weird dream. But deep down, I knew I couldn't. Not when Lila Montgomery's face was burned into my brain. Not when Nathan's voice kept echoing in my head like a song I couldn't shake. The rest of the day was a blur. I cleaned the apartment top to bottom, scrubbed the sink till it shone, vacuumed the carpet till it begged for mercy. Anything to keep my hands busy and my mind off that call. But every time I passed the table, that card was there, taunting me. By supper time, I gave in and pulled up Google again. This time, I typed Lila Montgomery. The hits were fewer, but heavier, like stones sinking in a pond. Society pages from the early 2000s, grainy photos of a girl who could have been my twin at galas and fundraisers, always with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. One article called her the golden child of the Montgomery dynasty, daughter of Constance Montgomery, a Tennessee senator with a reputation for chewing up opponents and spitting them out. There were whispers of scandal, too, campaign funds that didn't add up, rumors of dirty deals, but nothing stuck. Then came the boating accident. June 2010, Lake Cumberland. Lila was 22, out with friends on a yacht when a storm rolled in. Boat flipped. 3 survivors, no Lila. The search went on for weeks, but they never found her. I clicked on a photo of her and Nathan, taken a year before she vanished. He looked younger, softer, his arm around her like she was the only thing keeping him grounded. She was laughing, head tilted back, and I caught myself wondering if I laughed like that too, if I had that same spark she did. My chest tightened, and I slammed the laptop shut. This was nuts. I wasn't her. I was Ava Bennett, born and raised in Dixon County, daughter of Jim and Betty, who'd loved me even if they weren't always great at showing it. But those gaps in my story, no baby pictures, no birth certificate I'd ever seen, were starting to feel like holes I could fall through. I didn't call Nathan back that day, or the next, but I couldn't stop thinking about him, about Lila, about the way my life felt like a book with the first chapter torn out. Thursday night, I was back at Maggie's pouring coffee for Roy Tucker like nothing had changed. He was griping about a late shipment, same as always, but I barely heard him. My eyes kept drifting to the door, half expecting Nathan to walk through it again, even though I knew he was long gone. "You all right, Ava?" Roy asked, squinting at me over his eggs. "You look like you seen a ghost." I forced a smile, topping off his mug. "Just tired, Roy. Long week." He grunted, not buying it, but too polite to push. Maggie wasn't so subtle. She cornered me by the grill after the dinner rush, hands on her hips like a mama hen ready to scold. "Spill it, girl," she said, her cat-eye glasses glinting under the fluorescence. "You've been jumpy as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs since Tuesday. What's eating you?" I opened my mouth to lie, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the way Maggie's eyes softened, like she'd seen more of the world than she let on. "You ever feel like you don't know who you are?" I asked, voice low so Roy wouldn't hear. She raised an eyebrow, wiping her hands on her apron. "Honey, I'm 58 years old. I've felt that more times than I can count. But you? You're Ava. Tough as nails. Best damn coffee in Tennessee. Whatever's got you spooked, it ain't bigger than you." I wanted to believe her, but the words felt hollow. What if I ain't who I think I am, Maggie? What if my whole life's been a lie? She studied me for a long moment, then sighed. "You digging into something dangerous, ain't you? I seen that look before, back when I was young and dumb. Be careful, Ava. Some truths ain't worth the trouble they bring." I nodded, but her words only made the itch worse. That night, I went home and pulled out my phone again. My hands were shaking as I dialed Nathan's number, but this time, I didn't let myself hang up. He picked up on the first ring. "Ava," he said, same as before, like he'd been waiting by the phone for days. "All right, mister," I said, voice steadier than I felt. "You got my attention, but I ain't coming to Nashville till you give me something real. What's this proof you're talking about? And don't bullshit me. I'm done with games." He let out a breath, like he'd been holding it since we last talked. "Fair enough. The coffee cup you poured me Tuesday night, I had it tested. DNA. It's a match, Ava. You and Lila, you're identical. Same genes, same blood. You're twins." The room spun, and I gripped the counter to keep from falling over. "Twins?" I choked out. "That's impossible. I'm an only child. My parents—" "Your parents didn't tell you everything," he cut in, gentle but firm. "I don't know the whole story yet, but I've got people working on it. Investigators, records, the works. Come to Nashville, Ava. I'll show you what we've found. You deserve to know." I wanted to scream at him, call him a liar, hang up and burn that damn card. But the truth was, I'd always felt it. A hole in my life I couldn't explain, a sense that something was missing. And now, here was Nathan Cole, holding out a piece of the puzzle like it was nothing. "I'll think about it," I said, voice barely above a whisper. "That's all I'm promising." "That's enough for now," he said, and I could hear the relief in his voice. "I'll be waiting." I hung up, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might bust right out of my chest. Twins. The word felt foreign, like trying to speak a language I'd never learned. I thought about Mama and Daddy, about the way they'd dodge my questions, about the life I'd built on what I thought was solid ground. It was all crumbling now, and I didn't know if I was brave enough to see what was underneath. But by Friday morning, I'd made up my mind. I packed a duffel bag with a couple of t-shirts, my good jeans, and the only pair of boots I owned that didn't have holes. I left a note for Maggie. "Gone for a bit, don't worry," and caught the midnight Greyhound to Nashville. The bus smelled like stale cigarettes and regret. But as the lights of Dixon County faded behind me, I felt something new stirring in my gut. Not just fear, but something alive, something hungry. Whatever Nathan Cole had waiting for me, I was ready to face it, or at least I hoped I was. The Greyhound rolled into Nashville, just as the sun was peeking over the horizon, painting the skyline in streaks of pink and gold. I stepped off the bus at the terminal on Fifth Avenue, my duffel bag slung over one shoulder and my boots scuffing the pavement. The air smelled different here, sharper, with a hint of exhaust and money, nothing like the damp earth and pine back in Dixon County. Downtown was already buzzing, folks in suits hustling past with coffee cups, music drifting out of bars that hadn't closed from the night before. I felt like a fish out of water, my faded jeans and Titans t-shirt screaming small town against all this city slickness. But I wasn't here to sightsee. I was here for answers, and Nathan Cole better have some damn good ones. He'd texted me an address while I was on the bus. Some swanky high-rise called The Pinnacle, overlooking the Cumberland River. I hoofed it the few blocks over, dodging tourists snapping pics of the Ryman Auditorium, till I stood in front of a glass tower that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie. The doorman gave me a once-over, his nose wrinkling like I'd tracked in mud, but I flashed Nathan's name, and he waved me through with a grunt. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor made my ears pop, and when the doors slid open, I stepped into a world I'd only seen on TV. Nathan's penthouse was a damn palace. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across one wall, showing off Nashville sprawled out below like a glittering quilt, the river snaking through it, the Batman buildings spiking the sky. The floors were polished hardwood, not a scuff in sight, and the furniture looked like it cost more than my whole life put together. Leather couches, a glass coffee table with edges sharp enough to cut, a bar stocked with bottles I couldn't pronounce. It smelled like cedar and bourbon, and I caught myself tugging at my shirt, suddenly wishing I'd packed something nicer than a $5 tea. Nathan was waiting for me, standing by the window with his hands in his pockets. He'd traded the rain-soaked suit from Tuesday for a crisp white button-down, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, and dark jeans that still screamed money. Those blue eyes locked on me the second I walked in, and I felt that same jolt I'd gotten at Maggie's, like he was seeing through me, past me, into something I didn't even know was there. "Glad you made it," he said, voice smooth as ever, but there was a tightness around his mouth, like he was holding something back. "You want a drink? Coffee? Water?" "I'm good," I said, dropping my bag by the door and crossing my arms. Let's skip the small talk, all right? You dragged me all the way here with some wild-ass story about twins and DNA. Start talking." He nodded, like he'd expected that, and gestured to a hallway off the living room. "Come on. It's easier to show you." I followed him, my boots thudding against the hardwood, feeling every bit the outsider I was. He led me to a room that looked like something out of one of those crime shows. A whole wall covered in papers, photos, maps with red pins and strings connecting dots I couldn't make sense of. In the center were two pictures side by side. One of Lila Montgomery, smiling in that fancy dress from the articles, and one of me, my driver's license photo, the shitty one I'd taken 3 years ago when I'd had a cold and looked half dead. Seeing us together like that, pinned up like evidence, made my stomach flip. "What the hell is this?" I asked, voice climbing higher than I meant it to. "You been stalking me?" "Not stalking," Nathan said, stepping closer to the wall. "Investigating. 15 years, Ava. That's how long I've been chasing this. Lila didn't die in that accident. I never believed it. No body, no proof. Just a story that never added up. Then 3 weeks ago, my software flagged a match." He tapped my photo. "Facial recognition, cross-referenced with every driver's license in the country. You popped up. A statistical impossibility unless—" "Unless what?" I snapped, my hands balling into fists. "Spit it out, Nathan." He turned to face me, eyes burning with something I couldn't name. "Unless you're her twin. Identical. Same DNA. I had the cup you poured me at the diner tested. It's a perfect match to Lila's. Your sister's, Ava." The room tilted, and I grabbed the edge of a desk to steady myself. "That's bullshit," I said, but my voice cracked, giving me away. "I'm an only child. My parents, Jim and Betty, they'd have told me if they didn't tell you everything." He cut in, gentle but firm. "I've got records, Ava. Private adoption, off the books, cash under the table. Your folks took you in when you were 6 months old. Lila stayed with the Montgomerys. Old money, political power. Constance Montgomery, their mother. She's a senator now. Back then she was climbing the ladder. And twins. They didn't fit the plan." I stared at him, my brain scrambling to catch up. "You're saying my mama and daddy lied to me? That I was, what, sold off like some kind of secret?" My chest tightened, and I could feel the tears prickling, but I blinked them back. No way I was crying in front of this guy. "I'm saying someone went to a lot of trouble to split you two up," Nathan said, stepping closer. "I don't know why yet, not all of it, but I've got people digging. Investigators, forensic accountants, the works. Whatever happened, it's tied to Constance and that accident, and you're the key to figuring it out." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that echoed off the walls. "So I'm some kind of pawn in your rich folks' game? You don't even know me, Nathan. What, you see my face and think I'm your ticket to bringing Lila back? I ain't her." "I know you're not," he said, voice dropping low. "But you're connected to her, to me. I didn't mean to drag you into this, Ava. But when I saw you, it was like a damn miracle. I couldn't walk away." I turned away, staring at that wall of chaos. Photos, dates, scribbled notes in Nathan's sharp handwriting. It was obsession, plain and simple, and I was smack in the middle of it. Part of me wanted to grab my bag and bolt back to the bus station, back to Maggie's and Roy and the life I knew. But another part, the part that had always wondered why I didn't fit, wouldn't let me move. "All right," I said finally, turning back to him. "I'll stay, for now. But you pull any more creepy shit like stealing my DNA and I'm gone, you hear?" He nodded, a flicker of relief crossing his face. "Fair enough. I'll get you set up in the guest room. We'll start fresh tomorrow." That night, I barely slept. The guest room was bigger than my whole apartment, with a bed so soft it felt like sinking into a cloud, but my mind wouldn't shut off. twins, adoption, Constance Montgomery. It was too much, too fast, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lila's face, my face, staring back at me. Around midnight, I slipped out of bed and padded to the living room, staring out those giant windows at the city lights blinking like a million little lies. That's when I noticed the packages. They were stacked on a side table. A silk scarf in my favorite shade of teal, a beat-up copy of To Kill a Mockingbird I'd had sticking out of my bag at the diner, a set of fancy baking tools I'd never afford on my own. No notes, no labels, just stuff I'd mentioned in passing that night at Maggie's. Nathan had been watching me, collecting me like I was some kind of project. I should have been pissed. Hell, I was pissed. But there was something else too. A warmth I didn't want to name creeping up my spine. The next day, I was still wrestling with it all when Nathan took me downtown for coffee. We were sitting at a hipster joint on 12th Avenue, all exposed brick and overpriced lattes, when I saw him. A guy across the street, leaning against a black SUV, watching us. He was tall, lean, with dark hair and a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. Something about him screamed trouble, the kind of trouble that didn't care who got hurt. "Who's that?" I asked, nodding toward the window. Nathan followed my gaze, and his jaw tightened. "Dunno, but he's been tailing us since we left the building." The guy, Jasper, I'd learn later, caught me looking and tipped his head like we were old pals. "Pretty thing, like you shouldn't be alone in a city like this," he called out when we stepped outside, his voice smooth as whiskey, but cold as ice. I flipped him off, but my skin crawled as we walked away. Nathan's hand brushed mine, protective-like, and I didn't pull back. Back at the penthouse, I made up my mind. "I'm in," I told him, voice steady for the first time since I'd gotten here. "But we do this my way, too. No more secrets." "Deal," he said. And for a second, I thought I saw something like hope in those blue eyes, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Jasper wasn't just some random creep, and that whatever we were digging into was about to get a whole lot uglier. I'd been in Nashville 3 days, and already it felt like I'd lived a lifetime outside my own skin. Nathan's penthouse was starting to feel less like a museum and more like a war room, with that wall of papers and pins staring me down every time I walked by. I'd agreed to stay, to dig into this mess with him, but I wasn't ready for how fast it had all come crashing in. By Wednesday morning, I was pacing the hardwood floors in my socks, a mug of coffee gone cold in my hands, trying to figure out how to ask the one question I'd been dodging since I got here. What the hell did my parents know? Nathan caught me mid-pace, leaning against the kitchen counter with a glass of water instead of his usual bourbon. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes, hair a little messy, like he'd been up all night chasing ghosts again. "You're gonna wear a hole in my floor, Ava," he said, a half-smile tugging at his lips. "What's on your mind?" I stopped, setting the mug down harder than I meant to. "I need to call my folks, Jim and Betty. If what you're saying's true, about the adoption, about Lila, they've got some explaining to do." He nodded, like he'd been waiting for this. "You want me to give you the room?" "Nah," I said, shaking my head. "Stay. You started this. Might as well hear it through." I grabbed my phone off the counter, my hands trembling so bad I had to sit down at the bar stool to keep from dropping it. The kitchen smelled like coffee and the faint tang of lemon cleaner, and the city hummed outside those big windows, oblivious to the bomb I was about to drop on my own life. I dialed Mama's number, the landline they'd had since I was a kid, and waited while it rang, each trill twisting my gut tighter. "Ava, honey?" Mama's voice came through, warm but shaky, like she'd been crying or was about to. "You all right? Maggie said you took off somewhere." "Hey, Mama," I said, swallowing hard. "I'm in Nashville. with a friend. Look, I ain't got time to ease into this. I need you to tell me the truth. Was I adopted? The line went quiet. So quiet I could hear the clock ticking in their kitchen back in Dixon County, 300 miles away. Nathan watched me from across the counter, his face unreadable, but his knuckles were white around that glass. Betty? Daddy's voice cut in, gruff and low. He must have picked up the other extension. What's she talking about? Jim, Mama started, then stopped, her breath hitching. Ava, why are you asking this now? 'Cause I got a guy here saying I'm somebody's twin, I snapped, louder than I meant to. Saying you and Daddy took me in under the table, cash in an envelope, no questions asked. That true? Y'all lied to me my whole damn life? Another silence, longer this time, and then Mama started sobbing, soft, broken sounds that hit me like a fist. We didn't want you to know, baby, she said finally. They said it was better that way. Safer. We couldn't have kids. You know that. When the man came with you so tiny and perfect, we just wanted to give you a home. What man? I pressed, my voice climbing. Who gave me to you? Tell me. I don't know his name, Daddy cut in, sounding older than I'd ever heard him. Big fella, suit and tie, showed up at the farm one night with a wad of cash and a baby, said you needed us, said we couldn't ask where you came from. We took the money, Ava. God forgive us, we took it and kept quiet. I slid off the stool, pacing again, my boots forgotten by the door. So it's true, I said, more to myself than them. I'm adopted, and you never thought to tell me? We were scared, Mama said, crying harder now. They said if we talked, they'd take you away. We loved you, Ava. Still do. You're our girl, no matter what. I wanted to scream, to cuss them out for keeping me in the dark, but the hurt in their voices stopped me cold. They weren't liars by nature, just folks who'd made a deal they didn't understand. I mumbled something about needing time and hung up, my hands shaking so bad I could barely hit the button. Nathan didn't say a word, just watched me with those blue eyes like he knew I was falling apart inside. They confirmed it, I said finally, sinking onto the couch. Cash under the table, no names. I ain't theirs, not really. You're still you, Ava, he said, sitting across from me on the coffee table, close enough that our knees almost touched. This don't change that. Doesn't it? I shot back, voice raw. I don't even know who I am anymore, Nathan. And you're sitting there with your fancy tech and your wall of crazy, acting like this is some damn detective game. It's my life. I know, he said, and for the first time I saw a crack in that cool exterior, a flicker of guilt, maybe shame. I didn't mean for it to hit you this hard, but we're close, Ava. Closer than I've ever been to finding Lila. He pulled a file from a stack on the table, thick, dog-eared, stuffed with papers that looked older than me. My people tracked down some leads while you were sleeping. Constance Montgomery, Lila's mom, your mom. She was neck-deep in a scandal back in '95, right around when you two were born. Illegal campaign funds, hush money, the works. Twins didn't fit her image. Perfect family, perfect career. One baby, sure. Two? Too messy. I took the file, flipping through it with numb fingers. Grainy photocopies of bank statements, a memo with Constance's signature, a blurry photo of a woman in a power suit holding a baby that could have been me or Lila. So she, what, gave me away to keep her hands clean? Looks that way, Nathan said, leaning forward. But it's bigger than that. Someone helped her, someone with pull. We're still digging, but it's tied to that boating accident. I think they staged it to get rid of Lila when she started asking questions. My head was spinning, but I forced myself to focus. Questions about me? Maybe, he said. Or the money. Or both. Point is, you're not just a loose end, Ava. You're proof. Living, breathing proof. That Constance's perfect little world's built on lies. I tossed the file back on the table, my chest tight. And what am I supposed to do with that? Confront a senator? I'm a waitress, Nathan, not some damn superhero. You don't have to do anything yet, he said, his hand brushing mine for a split second before he pulled back. Just stay with me. We'll figure it out together. I nodded, too tired to argue, but the air between us felt charged, like a storm about to break. His touch lingered in my head longer than it should have, and I hated myself for noticing, for wanting it, even a little, when everything else was falling apart. That night, I told Nathan I needed air. He didn't argue, just gave me a key card and told me to be careful. I ended up at a dive bar a few blocks away. Neon signs, sticky floors, the twang of a steel guitar cutting through the chatter. I was nursing a cheap beer, trying to drown the noise in my head, when Jasper Kane slid onto the stool next to me. "Didn't expect to see you here, darling," he said, voice smooth as silk but sharp underneath. Up close, he was trouble-wrapped in a pretty package. Dark hair, green eyes that glinted like a cat's, a leather jacket that smelled like smoke, and bad decisions. "City life treating you all right?" "Leave me alone," I said, gripping my bottle tighter. "I ain't in the mood," he smirked, leaning in close enough I could feel his breath on my neck. "Oh, I think you are. Pretty thing like you, caught up with a guy like Cole. You're in over your head, sweetheart. I could help you out. Make things easier." I shoved him back, hard enough to make him laugh. "I said back off, asshole." "Feisty," he said, standing up slow, like he had all the time in the world. "I like that. Tell Nathan he's poking a hornet's nest. And you? Watch your back." He was gone before I could cuss him out, melting into the crowd like smoke. My hands were shaking when I paid my tab and bolted back to the penthouse, Jasper's words ringing in my ears. Nathan was waiting up, and one look at my face told him something was wrong. "Jasper?" he asked, voice tight. "Yeah," I said, locking the door behind me. "He knows we're digging, said you're stirring up trouble." Nathan's jaw clenched, and he grabbed his phone, barking orders to someone about tightening security. "He's a fixer," he said when he hung up. "Works for whoever's got the cash. If he's on us, we're closer than I thought." The next morning, I woke up to a call from Daddy. His voice was rough, panicked. "Ava, somebody broke into the house last night, tore the place apart. Pictures, drawers, everything. I had a spell, honey. Heart's acting up. You gotta come home." My blood went cold, and I was on my feet before he finished talking. "I'm coming, Daddy. Hold on." Nathan tried to stop me, citing security risks, but I shut him down fast. "They're still my family," I said, voice breaking. "The only ones who've ever loved me for real. I ain't leaving them to deal with this alone." He didn't fight me after that, just booked me a flight to Nashville Dixon Regional and promised to follow with backup. As the plane took off, I stared out the window, Daddy's words echoing in my head. This wasn't just about me and Lila anymore. Whatever we'd stirred up, it was hitting the people I loved, and I'd be damned if I let it take them down. The flight from Nashville to Dixon was a blur, my mind stuck on Daddy's shaky voice and the image of our little farmhouse torn apart. By the time I landed, Nathan had a rental car waiting, a black Chevy Tahoe with tinted windows, the kind of ride that screamed money and trouble. He'd insisted on coming, calling in a couple of his security guys to tail us, and I didn't argue. Not after Jasper's creepy bar stunt and the break-in. Whatever we'd kicked up, it wasn't playing nice anymore. We got to the farm around noon, the gravel driveway crunching under the tires as I took in the mess. The front door was hanging off its hinges, windows smashed, and Mama's flower boxes, the ones she'd tended like babies, were stomped flat. Inside was worse. Furniture flipped, drawers yanked out, old photos of me scattered across the floor like trash. Daddy was sitting on the couch, a blanket around his shoulders and an oxygen mask strapped to his face, while Mama fussed over him with red-rimmed eyes. "Ava," she said, rushing over to hug me so tight I could barely breathe. "Thank God you're here." "What happened?" I asked, pulling back to look at Daddy. He was pale, sweat beading on his forehead, but he waved me off like it was nothing. "Bunch of bastards in ski masks," he grunted, voice raspy. "Barged in last night, tore through everything. Kept asking where you were, honey. I told 'em to go to hell and one of 'em clocked me good. Next thing I know, my chest's tight and I'm on the floor." My stomach dropped, and I shot a look at Nathan. He was already on his phone, barking orders to his team about upping security and checking police reports. "This is my fault," I said, sinking onto the arm of the couch. "I started digging, and now they're coming after y'all." "Ain't your fault," Daddy said, grabbing my hand with a grip stronger than he looked. "You didn't ask for this. But you watch yourself, Ava. These folks mean business." I stayed till the paramedics cleared Daddy. Mild heart attack, they said, but he'd pull through with rest, and promised Mama I'd call every day. Nathan's guys set up cameras around the farm, and we hit the road back to Nashville by dusk. But halfway there, his phone buzzed with a call that changed everything. "We've got her," he said, voice tight as he hung up. "Lila. My investigator tracked her to a nowhere town in Montana, place called Whitefish. She's alive, Ava, but she's not alone." "What do you mean, not alone?" I asked, my heart kicking up a gear. "She's under guard," he said, eyes fixed on the road. "Some outfits keeping her there, drugged, controlled, were flying out tonight." Montana hit me like a slap, cold, wild, nothing like the rolling hills of Tennessee. We landed in Kalispell after midnight, rented another SUV, and drove an hour through pitch-black backroads to Whitefish. Nathan's team had pinpointed a rundown cabin on the edge of town, tucked between pine trees and a field of dry corn stalks that rustled like whispers in the wind. The air smelled like frost and wood smoke, and my breath fogged as we crouched behind a rusted tractor, scoping the place out. The cabin was small, weathered, with a single light flickering through a cracked window. Two guys in black jackets patrolled outside, handguns glinting at their hips. Nathan's security lead, a burly ex-Marine named Travis, handed me a pair of binoculars. "She's in there," he whispered. "Saw her through the back window. Looks rough." I peered through the lenses, and there she was. Lila. My twin. She was sitting on a cot, head slumped, hair a tangled mess of dark brown that matched mine. She looked thinner than the photos, pale as a ghost, her eyes glassy like she was half gone. My chest tightened, a mix of relief and rage boiling up. This was real. She was real. And somebody'd done this to her. "We gotta get her out," I said, handing the binoculars back. "Now." Nathan nodded, signaling Travis. "We go in quiet. Take out the guards, grab her, get the hell out of here." It went sideways fast. Travis took down one guard with a chokehold smooth as silk, but the second guy spotted us and fired a shot that cracked through the night like thunder. Nathan tackled me behind the tractor as bullets pinged off the metal, and I tasted dirt and adrenaline as we scrambled toward the cornfield. The stalks swallowed us up, dry and brittle, snapping under our boots as we ran. Shouts echoed behind us, flashlights cutting through the dark, and then I saw him, Jasper Kane, stepping out of the cabin with a grin like he'd just won the damn lottery. "Well, well," he called, voice carrying over the chaos. "Y'all sure know how to make a mess, don't you?" Nathan cursed under his breath, pulling me deeper into the field. "Keep moving," he hissed. "Travis'll handle the others." We zigzagged through the corn, my lungs burning, until we hit a ditch by the road. Headlights flared in the distance. Travis's back up, and I heard Jasper laugh, low and mean, before he vanished back into the shadows. The SUV screeched up, and we piled in with Travis, peeling out as gunfire faded behind us. But we weren't done. Travis had Lila, limp and dazed, cradled in the back seat. "She's out of it," he said, checking her pulse. "Drugged to hell, but alive." I climbed over the seat, kneeling beside her. Up close, she was me. Same cheekbones, same scar, same everything. But softer, like life had sanded her edges down. "Lila," I whispered, brushing hair out of her face. "It's me, Ava. We're getting you out of here." Her eyes fluttered, unfocused, and she mumbled something I couldn't catch. My throat closed up, and I looked at Nathan, who was gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping him steady. "She's really here," I said, voice breaking. "After all this?" "Yeah," he said, glancing back at her with something raw in his eyes. Relief, guilt, maybe both. "We've got her." We holed up in a safe house an hour outside Whitefish, a log cabin Nathan's team had secured, hidden in the mountains with a view of snow-capped peaks. Lila was out cold on a couch, a blanket tucked around her, while Travis patched up a graze on his arm from the fight. I couldn't stop staring at her, this stranger who was my sister, my mirror, my missing piece. Nathan sat beside me, close enough I could feel the heat off him, his silence heavy with 15 years of waiting. "She tried to run," Lila mumbled when she finally came to, her voice weak as a whisper. I leaned in, holding her hand, cold, trembling but real. "I found out about you." "Asked too many questions. They took me, kept me quiet." "Who?" I asked, squeezing her fingers. "Who did this?" She shook her head, eyes drifting shut again. "Don't know. Men in suits, drugs, said I'd ruin everything." Nathan's jaw tightened, and he stood up, pacing like a caged animal. "Constance," he said, voice low and furious. "Or someone working for her. This ain't just about hiding a twin anymore. It's bigger." Before I could answer, Lila grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. "There's a USB, she rasped. "In my shoe. Evidence. Took it before they got me." I dug into her worn sneaker, pulling out a tiny flash drive crusted with dirt. Nathan plugged it into his laptop, and we watched as files loaded, bank records, emails, a grainy video of Constance Montgomery shaking hands with a guy in a suit, money-changing hands. "Campaign fraud," Nathan muttered. "Enough to bury her. Lila must have stolen it when she ran." The safe house felt too small then, the walls pressing in as the weight of it hit me. We had proof, real, hard proof, but we'd painted a target on our backs bigger than Tennessee. Jasper was still out there, and whoever he worked for wasn't going to let this slide. That night, after Lila crashed again, Nathan and I sat by the fire, the crackle of logs the only sound for a while. I was bone-tired, my head spinning with everything. The rescue, the USB, the fact that my sister was alive and broken on that couch. Nathan looked at me, firelight dancing in his eyes, and I saw something shift. Not just the hunter I'd met at Maggie's, but a man who'd lost too much and found something new. "You okay?" he asked, voice rough. "No," I said, honest for once. "But I'm alive. She's alive. That's something." He nodded, then reached out, his hand covering mine. It wasn't soft or sweet. It was raw, desperate, like he needed to feel me there. I didn't pull away. The air between us crackled, hotter than the fire, and before I knew it, I leaned in. His lips crashed into mine, hard and hungry, tasting like bourbon and regret. It wasn't gentle. It was two people who'd been running from hell and finally stopped long enough to breathe. His hands slid up my back, pulling me closer, and for a minute, the world melted away. No Jasper, no Constance, just us. The kiss broke when his phone buzzed, sharp and insistent. He cursed, grabbing it, and I saw his face go pale. "It's Travis," he said, putting it on speaker. "They hit the farm again, Nate. Worse this time. Ava's dad's in the hospital. Critical." My heart stopped, and I was on my feet, the heat of Nathan's touch replaced by ice. "We've got to go," I said, voice trembling. "Now!" He didn't argue. He didn't. We packed up Lila, the USB, and what little fight we had left, and headed back into the storm. Not the rain this time, but something darker. Something that wasn't going to stop till it broke us all. The drive from Montana back to Tennessee felt like it took a lifetime. Every mile heavy with the weight of Daddy's condition and the USB burning a hole in my pocket. Lila was slumped in the back seat of the SUV, still groggy from whatever they'd pumped into her, her breathing shallow but steady. Nathan's hands were white-knuckled on the wheel, his jaw set so tight I thought it might crack. Travis followed in a second car, his team ready for whatever came next. But I couldn't shake the feeling we were racing towards something bigger than any of us could handle. The stars were out, sharp against the black sky, but they didn't offer any comfort, just reminded me how small we were in this mess. We hit Dixon County General Hospital at dawn, the parking lot half empty and smelling like asphalt and antiseptic. Mama was in the waiting room, her face crumpled like an old tissue, and she threw her arms around me the second I walked in. "He's stable," she said, voice thick with tears. "But it was close, Ava. Too close." I hugged her back, my throat so tight I couldn't speak. Daddy was in ICU, hooked up to machines that beeped and hissed, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. The break-in had been worse this time. No ski masks, just 3 guys who'd kicked in the door and beaten him till he collapsed, demanding to know where I was. They'd trashed the place again, but left empty-handed. Mama said the cops were calling it a robbery gone wrong, but we all knew better. This was a message, and it had Jasper Kane's name written all over it. Nathan stayed quiet, letting me have my time with Mama, but I could see the gears turning in his head. When we stepped outside for air, he finally spoke. "This ends now," he said, voice low and dangerous. "We've got the USB. We've got Lila. We take it public, blow Constance's world apart before they can hit us again." I nodded, but my stomach churned. "And then what? We just hand it over and hope they leave us alone? You saw what they did to Daddy, to Lila. They ain't stopping." "They will if we make it too hot to keep coming," he said, eyes burning into mine. "I've got a contact at the Tennessean. Investigative reporter owes me a favor. We leak the files, let the world see what Constance did. It's our best shot." I didn't love it. Felt too much like playing with fire. But I didn't have a better plan. We drove back to Nashville, Lila in tow, and holed up in Nathan's penthouse while his team tightened security. The city felt different now, its glitter tarnished, the honky-tonks and neon signs hiding something darker underneath. I sat with Lila on the couch, her hand in mine, trying to make sense of the sister I'd only just found. "You really my twin?" she asked, voice soft but clearer than it had been in Montana. Her eyes, my eyes, searched my face like she was looking for proof. "Looks that way," I said, squeezing her hand. "Nathan's got the DNA to back it up. I'm still wrapping my head around it too." She nodded, pulling her knees to her chest. I knew something was off even when I was little. "Mama, Constance." She'd look at me sometimes, like she was scared I'd figure it out. I started digging a few years before, before they took me. Found papers, overheard fights. That's when I got the USB. What's on it? I asked, my heart picking up speed. Money trails, she said, eyes distant. Bribes, offshore accounts. But there's more. Something about a project. I didn't get it all before they grabbed me. Nathan was already at his laptop, pulling up the USB's files again. Most of it was what we'd seen. Proof of Constance's campaign fraud. Enough to land her in prison for years. But buried in a locked folder was something else. Medical records, lab reports, emails about Project Gemini. My name, Ava Bennett, was in there, alongside Lila's, with dates going back to 1995. Nathan's face went pale as he scrolled, and when he looked at me, I knew it was bad. What is it? I asked, standing up so fast the room spun. It's not just about hiding twins, he said, voice low. You and Lila, you weren't born the way most folks are. Constance didn't give birth to you. You were created, a DNA experiment, bankrolled by her family in some shady biotech outfit. They wanted perfect heirs, controllable, but you were unexpected. 2 instead of 1. They kept Lila, gave you away to keep it quiet. The words hit like a freight train, knocking the air out of my lungs. Created? I echoed, my voice climbing. You're saying we're what, lab rats? That ain't possible. It was, Nathan said, pointing to the screen. Early gene editing tech. Illegal as hell, but they had the money to pull it off. Constance's husband couldn't have kids. This was their workaround. But when you both came out, it was too risky to keep you together. Too many questions. Lila's hand tightened in mine, her breath hitching. That's why she hated me, she whispered. I was never enough. Always a reminder of their screw-up. I wanted to scream, to smash that damn laptop and every lie it held. My whole life, my parents, my name, my face, was a fabrication, a science project gone wrong. I looked at Nathan, searching for something to anchor me, but he was as shaken as I was, his hands trembling as he closed the laptop. We've got enough to bury her, he said finally, but we need to move fast. If they know we have this... He didn't finish, but he didn't have to. Jasper's smirk flashed in my head, and I knew we were running out of time. The next day, Nathan's reporter friend broke the story. Headlines exploded across every news site in the country. Senator Constance Montgomery linked to decades-old fraud scandal. Montgomery family secrets unraveled. Twin mystery shocks. Tennessee. My face, Lila's face, was plastered everywhere, side by side with Constance's icy smile. The USB's files were out, untraceable, and the world was eating it up. But it didn't end there. Jasper came for us that night. Nathan's security caught him trying to breach the penthouse. A silent alarm tripped at 2 a.m., red lights flashing across the monitors. Travis and his team cornered him in the stairwell, and I watched through the feed as they wrestled him down, his green eyes glinting with that same cold amusement. You think this stops it? He shouted as they cuffed him. You're just the start, Ava. They'll come for you. He was gone, hauled off to a holding cell, but his words stuck like a splinter. Nathan pulled me close, his arms steady despite the chaos. He's bluffing, he said, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. The fallout was brutal. Constance resigned within a week, her career in ashes. Lila and I stayed out of the spotlight, moving into a small apartment in East Nashville, far from the cameras and the noise. She started therapy, piecing herself back together, and I opened a bakery, Bennett's Bites, a little hole in the wall with muffins and coffee that didn't cost an arm and a leg. Mom and Daddy visited when he was strong enough, marveling at Lila like she was a miracle they didn't deserve. We were a family now, weird and broken, but ours. Nathan was different too, softer, less haunted. He'd spent 15 years chasing Lila's ghost, but somewhere along the way, he'd found me. One night, as we stood on my balcony overlooking the city, the smell of fresh bread drifting up from the shop below, he took my hand. "I started this looking for her," he said, voice low. "I'm ending it, 'cause I found you." I looked at him, those blue eyes steady for the first time since we met. "What happens when the dust settles?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "When you don't need me to solve your mystery anymore?" He smiled, small and real. "I don't need you for that, Ava. I just need you." I made my choice then, not just for him, though he was part of it, not against Lila, who was finding her own way. I chose me, the Ava I was still figuring out, the one who'd walked through fire and come out stronger. Lila and I were sisters now, laughing over coffee, arguing over who got the bigger slice of pie. The media moved on to fresher scandals, but we still got stares sometimes, folks whispering about the Montgomery twins. I didn't take Constance's name or her money. That was never my story. Instead, I built something real, something mine. But the story didn't end clean. A month later, I got a text from an unknown number. "Nice bakery, darling. Shame if it burned." Jasper was out, escaped or released, nobody knew, and he wasn't done. I showed it to Nathan, and his face hardened, the old hunter waking up. "We'll handle it," he said, pulling me close. "Together." Life ain't a fairy tale, y'all. It's messy, scary, and sometimes it throws you a curveball that changes everything. But I learned something through all this. You don't have to know who you are to start building who you want to be. And when trouble comes knocking, you fight, not just for you, but for the ones who've got your back. That's Ava's crazy ride, y'all. Subscribe now and tell me in the comments. Would you fight for the truth like she did, or run the other way? Let's keep this story rolling.